Welcome to DFC on the Green. I'm Jason Gilbo. With me is Chris Etherington, taking a look at the WGC Mexico for DraftKings. Pretty loaded field this week. You got a lot of studs up top. We were talking before the show. It's just a lot of options. Like it's kind of tough to narrow down who you really want to use.
Yeah, it seems as though this week it might be a little game theory strategy. So basically, for example, you got DJ and Thomas at the top. You got DJ as your defending champion, and you got Thomas winning last week. So it's going to be interesting to see where people will go with those two. And I think personally, Spieth at the top might be the lone wolf there, just because he's playing okay, not great, and people are going to flock to like Fleetwood, to Rahm, and stuff like that. Is you just kind of have to think over and just pick and choose on who you like this week. It's one of those weeks where maybe just play mostly tournaments, not cash, just because you got everyone playing 4 days and you just don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, this tournament we were talking before. This was the infamous, Henrik Stenson withdrawal from last year, which was a very tilting week for a lot of people.
Yeah, he was, I believe, the most popular play of the week last year. And going back to yesterday, listening to Pat Mayo, he says something that was really frustrating to hear, I guess. So basically, last year, you got Tim Anderson basically saying that Stenson is free money, and he ends up withdrawing the tournament. And this year, Anderson is saying Fowler is free money for this week. So if you go back to last week, Anderson picked Justin Hadley to win, and he basically shit the bed. So after that week, I'm just fading Fowler altogether this week and see what happens.
And this is an interesting course because, we look and obviously it's well above sea level, well into the 7,000s. It's a course where a lot of these guys can just, absolutely hammer. Half of them don't even use a driver because they just don't need to here. And driving distance, obviously something that has been kind of a little bit beneficial over the last few tournaments. Are you considering that this week even more so, or just kind of leaving it as is?
Yeah, I think this week you just sort of stay away from that stat. Watching the golf highlights, not last night, early on today, DJ basically hit 4 drivers each day last year, just because he doesn't really need to. The ball will fly a lot farther than normal. So the guys do have to adjust with that. So for me personally, I'm just going to take the driving distance out and put in a stat that's called fairways gain. And basically the guys who gain strokes from being in the fairway, I think that's probably going to be the most heavy weighted stat for me.
Yeah, I think you have your par 4 and par 5 scoring with this tournament. I think strokes gained approach is an interesting one this week. There's a couple guys that stood out for me that we'll get to. Am I missing anything here that you're looking at?
Yeah, obviously being a no cut fan, I think birdies or better percentage is another one where you just kind of have to have in your stats. Being that it's a no-cut event, people have all 4 days to play, and for DraftKings scoring, you need guys who can make a lot of birdies. So I think for my top 2 is fairways gain, and then birdies are better.
Let's jump into it here. We were kind of hinted at the top tier of, Thomas and Johnson. Obviously, Johnson, the former winner, Thomas winning last week. You were talking about Spieth, who hasn't been playing quite well this year. And you kind of look at like Rahm here at 10-6. Obviously won the career builder, has kind of had a couple of average finishes since then. Like, he's scoring really well. Like, he's just like in that tier 2 and like hopping into the tier 1. Like, I'm waiting for another big tournament. I think this is one where you can have it.
Yeah, he also played well here last year, finishing tied for third. So I like Rahm as well. He's basically like a mini DJ, and you're getting a discount from that. So with that said, he's first in the field in birdie or better percentage. He's also sixth in the field for par 4 scoring. So I think I'm just going to start with Rahm and Fleetwood as my top 2 guys. Fleetwood is playing very well. He had a chance to win last week. If you look at his stats, I mean, he's 8th in the field for ball striking. He's 3rd in the field for fairways gained. So I think I'm going to start most of my lineups with Rahm and Fleetwood. I think Spieth might be my third guy there because I think he's going to be the lowest owned at the top.
And you look at that range, and then you have just a huge amount of names that go below it. Like, Ricky Fowler's below 10K. Your thoughts on him, or he's out for the week due to being cursed? Justin Rose, Phil Mickelson. Let's talk lefty here. I mentioned I liked lefty before the show, and you kind of was like, you agreed, but you didn't want to agree. I got that vibe from you.
Yeah, I normally don't play Phil just because it has been a while since he has won, but it seems like that he's getting into form again. Almost the same form he had back in 2013. It's funny how a couple of weeks ago at the Waste Management, he was mentioned that this might be the week where, depending on how you finish, you might be outside the top 50 in the world for the first time since 96. Well, since that, it's been like a juice for him for motivation to play well, and he's finished inside the top 10 his last 3 tournaments. So at 9,300, I think so. Probably the right price for him. If you look at his stats, I mean, he's 3rd in the field for birdie or better percentage, 4th in the field for par 4 scoring. So it is scary, but I kind of have a feeling for lefty this week. He did play well here last year, finishing 7th. So with a good form going into this week, I think he has a very good shot of winning. Yeah, I kind of have to play him because I just have a feeling something will happen for him. If it's not this week, it will happen soon.
What are your thoughts on like Rose and Garcia here? Like, I think Garcia's he's gained a little bit of love here to start the week. He's 9,100. Consistent option, a course that I think he can also play well at. Like, 9,100 is not bad. Like, there's a lot of options in this range. You mentioned before the show that you think Rose is going to go overlooked in this range, just given that there's so many options.
Yeah, and I think what's helping him with his ownership a little bit is because he had a month off. But even with having a month off, for all the stats that I'm looking at this week, 4 of them is in the top 5 in the field, including like he's 1st in the field for par 4 scoring. He's like 5th in the field for birdie or better percentage. He's also 4th in the field for par 5. So with that in mind, and the way he's sandwiched in between Fowler, Fleetwood, and Mickelson there, I think in this range, I think Rose might, if not the lowest owned of the bunch, maybe the second lowest owned. I think Garcia might be in the running for potentially the lowest owned, but yeah, I just kind of like Mickelson. I think Rose is just in form, and I kind of like him this week and moving forward.
Yeah, I definitely don't mind. I think the next guy that I like in this range would be Alex Noren. 8,800, price is way down this week. He's fourth in par five scoring. A guy who's been solid this year. Like I had him as a potential guy to win, I think 2 weeks ago. Or whatever it was, Genesis, I think, where I said, and obviously third at the Honda Classic. I think he's got a win coming up here soon. Like I think he's closing in here. He's been off on a couple of tournaments where he's just missed on maybe a hole or two to kind of forcing a playoff or being in that next tier.
Yeah, just like the guys I mentioned as well, like Rose and Mickelson. Nord is a decent play up here. I think is sort of like in a dead range, really. Like if you look at this range, I mean, you got Watson, you got Cantley there. I'm not sure where the ownership's going to be for Noren. If you consider his recent play, then he should be the most popular guy in this range. But overall, I don't mind him as a play this week just because of his stats. I mean, he's fifth in the field for fairways gained. He's ninth in the field for par five scoring. And I mean, he finished basically near the bottom of the field last year, but at least he knows the course and he can improve on that. As for me, I may have to fade him and go a little bit cheaper.
Well, I know you like Tony Finau, 8,500. You mentioned him in your article. Finau's a guy, we talk about, I feel like, every pod just because he's always at a decent price tag.
Yeah, he's at that price where I think he's probably going to be the most popular pick just because but he played well at the Genesis. And a lot of people are comparing this week to Genesis just because of the same grass type. So, I mean, if you look at Finau's stats, he's seventh in the field for par four scoring. He's 13th in the field for birdie or better percentage. Yeah, he has to play here. He didn't play here last year, but I think the way he's playing now, and we say it every week with him, but as long as he's putting average, he should be at the top end of the field and have a good shot of finishing high on the leaderboard.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing every week. Like, Finau's stats are always round out pretty well. A course that he can thrive at if he's putting, like he's going to be a solid scorer. A guy like who's going to play 4 days here, like Finau's going to be one of the higher scorers, I think, on the board.
Yeah, he's also going to be a popular pick as well. Like I said, I'm basically for my one and done pick. It's between him and a couple other guys. But overall, I think where he's sitting with his price and with his stats looking good as they are, as always. But yeah, I just kind of like Finau this week, and like I said, hopefully he just putt average, and I'll be okay from there.
And then we got Paul Casey, 8,400. Mr. Consistent, T16 here last year. Casey's just wanting to get, once again, like your solid cash game guy. I think I'm going to be looking other directions, though, in tournaments.
Yeah, he barely made the cut, I feel, back at the Genesis. He finished 49th there. But, I mean, it's still a made cut. Obviously, there's no cut this week, but before the Genesis, I mean, he's just had a top 20 tournament after tournament. So maybe having a week off He's well rested, and yeah, I mean, if you look at his stats, I mean, again, just like Finau, his stats are really solid. He's third in the field for ball striking, third in the field for par five scoring. Yeah, I just like his price, and I think for me personally, he's going to be one of my core guys for this week. I just really like him overall.
What are you doing with like Peters and Fisher here? Both are fairly cheap. I mean, last year, both those guys were inside the top 10. Yeah, any interest?
I mean, I don't mind them as a punt play. Um, I don't know how popular Peters will be, but I think Fisher might be a little overlooked. Not too many people know him, I feel, just because he normally plays on the European. Same with Peters, but I think more people know Peters than they do with Fisher. But I mean, I think he has a good punt option. I can go that route, picking those two over the like Paul Casey or Tony Finau.
And I know you're looking at Kevin Chappell, 8,100. You mentioned him in the GPP part of your section, the article. What do you like about him this week?
Just like the other guys I mentioned with their stats. I mean, if you look at Chappell's stat, I mean, he's second in the field for par four scoring. He's seventh in the field for ball striking. As you guys know now, that basically every week I look for those guys that are on form with their ball striking, and I think with playing here last year, he finished near the bottom of the field last year. He does know the course, and I mean, if you look at his recent play, I mean, he's had 2 top 10s in his last 4 starts. So, with that said, at 8,100, I think more people might go to Chez. They might go to like Berger or Oosthuizen. But overall, I think Chappell might be a nice tournament option. I don't think he's going to be that popular this week.
And then, Xander Schauffele here, 7,800. You mentioned him as kind of the cash game guy in that range. And this is a 7K range where there's just plenty of options to kind of pick your poison with. Like, I'm starting to kind of look and go, man, is ownership just going to be kind of spread out? Like, with all these guys like Woodland, RCB, Leishman, like these guys are all in play for me this week. And I don't know if we're going to see like huge ownership. Do you?
Not in this range. I think pretty much like you said, I think because of the fact that there's a lot of popular names in this upper tier $7,000 range. I mean, but Sander, it scares me that he didn't play here last year, but the fact that he's won the Tour Championship, he was the Rookie of the Year, and he finished 9th at the Genesis. I think you kind of have to maybe start with Sander and then pick a couple more guys and then just make basically a stance on the rest and saying, okay, I'm just going to fade them. They might be good plays, but I'm just going to just pick like maybe 3 or 4 more and just move on from there and hope that I pick the right guys.
Yeah, because I mean, like for me, like I want to narrow down my area in this one, and you brought up Kuchar to me when I was kind of looking more towards Woodland and RCB. I think Leishman is interesting as well. I want to talk Brendan Still here, who I think is maybe a higher upside guy at 7,500. For me, I mean, like he's just 8th in birdie or better percentage. Like he has potential here to score really well.
Yeah, I don't mind that play. I think for me, I'm going to go maybe Woodland for sure. Steele is just, I guess, an okay play in my mind. like he's 19th in the field for par 4 scoring. And he finished like basically a tie for 48th. So basically towards the bottom end of the field last year. And then if you compare his finish at the Genesis, it was finished the same. He finished 48th. So I think overall, I'm just going to fade these mid-range guys. I think Woodland might be my last pick here. He did finish 38th here. But if you look at his stats, I mean, he's almost similar to Rose, where every single one is like in the top 10. He's fourth in the field for birdie or better percentage. He's fourth in the field for ball striking. He's 10th in the field for par 4 scoring. So I think after Sander, I'm going to pick Woodland, and then from there, just pick and choose at the bottom. Just basically try and pick the guys who I think might not be as popular as other people will think.
And I know you're taking a look as well as Brendan Grace, like 7,700. We kind of glossed over him. He's another option in that range.
Yeah, he's more of like the guy that has the upside of finishing top 10, maybe even top 5. When you look at his stats, he's second in the field for strokes gained around the green, and every other stat is basically in the top 30 in the field. So, and this is the course where it kind of seems like it fits Brendan Grace a lot to his style of play. Just hitting irons off the tee and knock it on the green and make your 15, 20 footer for birdie. That's pretty much what he did last year when he won the, I think, what was it, the Heritage, I believe he won there. So with him at 7,700, I think is a nice value play for him. And I don't think a lot of people will play him as well, just because he's next to like Kuchar and RCB.
Yeah, and I think a guy that I might roll the dice on too is Pat Perez, 7,400, around 15th or 16th in par 4 and par 5 scoring. Tie for 5th in birdie or better percentage. I think he's an interesting name to keep an eye on this week. I think there's some upside there. Like he's scoring pretty well this season. Just kind of hasn't had the weekends. That final Sunday has kind of killed him of late.
Yeah, with finishing here last year, like basically in the middle of the field, he finished tied for 38th last year. So, I mean, he's with the grass type. I can see it a little bit, and then if you could again going back to the Genesis, he basically finished 41st. So it kind of looks like his run has come to an end at this point, where now he's just a guy to make the cut and just finish basically in the top half of the field. In this case, it'll be around T30th, something like that. At 7,400, I think I need to see a little bit more, especially in these weeks where there's no cut. I just want the guys down here that have that upside, kind of like Grace, where he can be consistent and finish inside the top 10 as well. I think for me personally, I'm just going to fade Perez.
Like Perez is just a GPP play for me, and I'm not quite weighing last year's results as heavily. And I know a lot of people are comparing the Genesis. And I get that. I don't think I'm just weighing it as heavily. Like I'm not trying to let it influence me completely just because this is such a new tournament.
Yeah, I think for me, it's like one of those situations where if the players has played the course before, he knows the knowledge now on where to miss it, on where the best spots to miss it is. So that's why I said that I'm a little scared to play Sander this week, or Tony Finau. They just don't have any history here from last year. But because of their recent play going into this week, I'm going to pick that. And it's just the fact that I feel more comfortable with those two than, say, like a Pat Perez, or even like a Pat Kasier. I just don't feel as comfortable playing those two. Normally I will, but as far as this week is concerned, I am, like I said, I think just looking for guys that have that upside in this range to finish inside the top 10. And from there, yeah, I think that's the strategy I'm going to go for this week.
And with this being a no cut, are you diving down anywhere? Is there anyone that stands out to you as an option, given the fact that you could potentially build stars and scrubs this week because there is no cut?
I think the lowest guy that I'm going to is Kyle Stanley. Just like Center, he has no course history from last year, but Stanley, I mean, if you look at his stats, he's second in the field for fairways gained. He's 17th in the field for par 5 scoring. And, I mean, he's one of those guys where not too many people will play him. Like, he's next to a couple popular names down here. Like, I know a lot of people are going to play I can't even say his name. Luton, I believe it is. I know he's being talked up a lot this week. Charlie Hoffman is right there. Uline is right there as well. So with that, and with, I mean, having the upside again, finishing in the top 10. I mean, he finished 5th going back at the first World WGC event. He finished fifth there, where Justin Rose won. So I think at 7,200, I'm going to go to him, and hopefully he, basically does the same thing back at the HSBC tournament.
I mean, like you said, like this, it's more geared toward GPP week, so like you can take flyers on some of these guys.
Exactly. Like, I think I mentioned it earlier, where these type of weeks you just want to play mostly tournaments, just because you don't know what the outcome is going to be. If it was a week where there's a cut, then play more cash, just because you can pick usually like 4 or 5 guys that you kind of know for sure that will make the cut and will have a chance of actually contending well on Sunday. This week, you're kind of just, like I said, at the top, where it's almost like a game theory perspective where, okay, I think this guy is going to be less talked about in this range, but he still has that upside of finishing like in the top 10. And that's really all it is. You're just basically picking up your best 6 golfers who you think is going to finish in the top 10, because that's really the only way where you will have a good week this week.
Who do you got win this week? Wrap things up here.
You know what? I mean, I've been back and forth at the top. I mean, if I had to pick the guy at the top, I kind of like Fleetwood. I think he's due. If it's not, I mean, but he's a popular pick. So, I mean, outside of him, I kind of like Spieth. I think this might be the week where everything will click for him, and I think not too many people will pick him to win. I think it's going to be like Fleetwood and Rahm and people like that. That a lot of people will go towards.
Yeah, Rom's my pick. So some really bold calls here.
Yeah, it's just one of those weeks where, I mean, if you don't pick the top guy, it's like you're just basically shooting fish in the barrel. Basically, it's like, well, like, who do you want? Like I said, I like Tony Finau this week, but I also like Paul Casey. I like Sander. So this is one of those situations where just pick one of the guys at the top who you think is going to win, and then go from there.
Try and dodge the withdrawal. There might be one or two withdrawals this week. That would be fun. This is always this is a tournament last year. Like, it's Mexico. Anything can happen in Mexico. It's crazy down there. So it should be a fun one. It should be very high scoring. And I expect, especially with a lot of these players seeing the course for a second time now, it was pretty high scoring last year. Because it was DJ 14 under, I believe, was his winning score.
Yeah, I believe that's what it was, and I totally agree. I think the second time around, knowing the terrain, knowing what to do, it's going to be a lot easier for the guys who play here last year. And then I looked at the weather again today, and it doesn't seem to be any concerns with the weather. It seems like the winds are going to be less than 10 miles per hour throughout the week. So, yeah, it should be, I'm going to say, around 17 under, maybe 20 under at the highest. But, yeah, it should be a nice scoring week.
Yep, I agree with you there. Let's go wrap it up for us. You can check out Chris's GPP article and cash game article over on dailyfantasycafe.com. And we'll see you guys next week.